My friends, there is nothing better than helping your fellow gamer complete their daily goals. But I get it, sometimes you just can't be bothered to put in the required effort. Well, lucky for you, there just so happens to be a boon support healer build that requires simple gameplay and minimal effort. To be specific, this is an Alacrity healer build that will use the Willbender and a hammer to generate Alacrity and heals. We will use traits to enhance our symbols to increase boon generation and healing, while also keeping our skill bar relatively simple, allowing us to put in lower effort than any healer build usually would. Okay, so this is sort of a variation of the simple DPS hammer build, the one where you just auto attack and your symbols stack up and deal all the damage for you. But this time we'll be doing similar actions, but these symbols will be doing the healing and boon generation for us, with a few added actions of course to get the boon generation started. Let's start with our equipment. For stats, we'll be using Harrier stats on everything. This will give us high healing power and boon generation, which is really the only two things we need for this build. To get Harrier stats, I would recommend getting some stat selectable gear from either PvP or World vs. World. Even if you don't like those game modes, it will allow you to save a lot of gold when getting Harrier's gear, so consider it. For the armor rune, take Rune of the Monk. This provides more healing and boon generation, the two most important things. You can only get that rune from the dungeon merchant, so while you work towards it, you could use Rune of Water, Rune of Rebirth, Rune of the Flock. For weapons, like I said, we are using Hammer, and we don't actually need a second weapon. The hammer alone gets the job done and will keep our class mechanics triggering consistently. I do use a staff on the second weapon, that way I can have another support weapon in the event I am forced out of melee range. For sigils, we use Transference and Concentration, which are both boosts to healing and boon generation. Transference is a bit expensive, but well worth it. You could maybe use something like Sigil of Water instead of Transference for a budget option, but Transference is way better since it gives a boost to your overall outgoing healing. I would really recommend the investment. And for the relic, Relic of Caracasa, this is mandatory. This will be assisting with the build's ability to burst heal, since it will trigger a heal whenever we use a blast finisher in a combo field. Now for the skills and traits. I'm going to start with the skill bar. It's pretty simple. Receive the light on the heal. This will act as a burst heal for you and allies should you need one. Utilities, Bow of Truth for additional healing. I find it is useful to have an extra big AoE heal. Advance, this is a simple to use on-demand Aegis. You can easily block attacks and mechanics with this. And a flex slot, which is usually stand your ground for the stability, but if you are in an encounter that doesn't need stability, you can swap it out for Sanctuary, Signet of Mercy, Hold the Line, and on the Elite we take Signet of Courage. This keeps pulsing out healing and will keep the build simple since we don't need to activate this at all. On the traits we take Honor, Virtues, and Willbender. Honor goes with top, bottom, middle. Invigorated Bulwark will increase healing every time we block. Empowering Might for might generation, and Writ of Persistence, one of the main traits for this build. It will enhance symbols with healing and make them bigger. Virtues will also take top, bottom, middle. Unscathed Contender, this is a power damage thing, however the other two traits here are not always necessary. Ideally we are not going to be disabled, so Resolute Subconscious isn't needed, and if we're not taking any consecration skills, Master of Consecrations is also not needed. However, if you do use a consecration in your flex slot, you should take Master of Consecrations. Glacial Heart, this will enhance Hammer 2 and give self-healing whenever you disable or chill a foe, so this is a little bit of extra self-sustain. And Battle Presence, this is going to share Virtue 2's passive effect with allies. Willbender goes with bottom, middle, top. Conceited Curate for some self-sustain, Holy Reckoning for might and fury generation, and Phoenix Protocol. This is what is going to give Alacrity to this build. This trait is mandatory. Without this, we have no access to Alacrity. Okay, now that we're all set up, let's take a look at how this build is going to approach combat. First, just be aware that the very nature of playing a healer will require you to at least be alert and aware while playing. So you won't really be able to AFK press one button and be good to go, so just keep that in mind. The main combat rotation is pretty simple though. Use all your virtues at the start of combat and then just start up the hammer auto attack chain. When a charge of virtue 2 comes off cooldown, use it right away, and then use either virtue 1 or 3, whichever is off cooldown, to get yourself back in position with the rest of the squad. Just make sure you have the boss targeted if you use virtue 1, otherwise you're gonna launch yourself across the arena, putting yourself way out of position. Then be sure to also throw in a hammer 2 every once in a while just to give a bit of a healing burst. All your other skills are situational and or optional. Like I said, the nature of playing the healer doesn't allow you to fully check out while playing, but I will explain how I usually use all these other skills. Receive the Light is a burst heal. If you notice your party is getting low on health, use this to burst them back up. Bow of Truth can add a lot of extra healing in a large AoE. This is very useful to have for any high pressure fights. Advance is an on-demand Aegis. This is best used when a big attack or mechanic is incoming so you can block it for you and your party, but it will also trigger Invigorated Bulwark. Stand Your Ground gives stability, so it's best used when a hard CC attack is incoming. But if you took Sanctuary instead, Sanctuary can be used on a boss to break their break bar. Signet of Courage I never activate. I use this only for the passive healing. If I find myself needing to activate it, the squad is probably wiping and gonna die anyway. Now I have noticed there are a few notes to mention about the hammer. Hammer 2 is a very important skill for a few reasons. It can be used as a burst heal. Since it has a low cooldown, you don't need to worry about saving it for the right time. I sometimes work it into the rotation to keep the healing up a bit. This is due to our relic. It triggers an area heal every time we use a blast finisher in a combo field. Hammer's auto attack chain drops tons of light fields, so it will be easy to trigger the relic every time. Also, blasting a light field gives area Condi cleanse, which is nice to have. The chill will also give us a bit of extra self-healing too. It also has a little bit of movement in it, so it can also be used as your reposition skill after using virtue 2. So simply put, use hammer 2 often. It has a low cooldown, so there's no need to wait for the best opportune moment. Hammer 3 is pretty situational, but useful when you need it. It's an immobilize skill, so if there's a mechanic where adds or a mini boss needs to be held, you can do that with this skill. Hammer 4, Banish. This will serve as your main CC contribution to a break bar. It doesn't have the most CC on this one, so if you're in an encounter where you know CC is a big thing that your party is lacking, you might want to take Sanctuary instead. And Hammer 5 is not really important. The only time this might be useful is if you have to pin down some adds or something like that. If you are a little worried about performing properly in a squad, you can always head over to the training zone. Set the AoE damage field and then just go through your basic heal rotation. You should be able to go through the basic rotation that I described and keep yourself healthy. You can also check your boon bar and you should be able to keep Alacrity on yourself pretty much all the time. And while you're doing this, make sure you try to throw in a few of those extra skills just to simulate those moments in a fight where you might have to break your standard rotation for whatever reason. This is actually a great way to test out your skills and practice any build, to be honest, especially to make sure you understand at least the basic rotation and combos involved. I think it's also important to discuss a few observations I've had about this build. For one, like I've been saying, it is an easy, simple to play build. However, since it is a healer, you can't just no-brain AFK passive gameplay. You will still need to pay attention and make use of your skills to be effective. And of course, make sure you're following all fight mechanics. Don't get dead to a mechanic, okay? You're the healer, you need to stay up. This build also, admittedly, doesn't produce the most amount of healing. There are other builds that can produce better or more consistent healing, for example, the Quick Firebrand. However, this build serves as a great start for players who play Guardian and want to try being the healer. I know that the Firebrand build can be pretty overwhelming to some players, so this build can act as a much less intimidating healer build to play. And then once you've built up your confidence a bit, maybe you can try that heal Firebrand build. I also just think it's very useful to have another boon build in your arsenal so you can be a lot more useful to a squad. That way when they say they're looking for boons, you can join with those boons instead of having to wait for those roles to be filled and then hit them with the high DPS. So that's going to be a wrap on this build. If you decide to try it out, I hope it works out well for you. Thank you very much for watching, especially if you made it all the way through to the end. But until next time, bye for now.